never gets old.
I know. I love
Hey
it.
guys, I'm Hannah Hembry Bell.
I am Caitlin King Goldfinch.
And we are Law Moms Out Loud. We help lawyer moms grow as moms, lawyers, and people.
That's right.
And we're super excited for our guest today. And I mean, back-to-back shows. One of the kids this morning was like, do you make shows every day now? I was like, I guess I do, 2 days in a row.
We could. This could be our new full-time job.
Yeah, there we go. We just talk to our friends
Yeah.
on YouTube and Facebook all the time. But we are so excited about our guest today, Amber Vazquez. She is a big deal to all of us anyway, criminal lawyer in Austin, Texas. So she's local with us. Amber, we're so glad to have you. You want to tell everybody a little bit about you and what you're about?
Sure.
No pressure.
So I am a Texas law mom, obviously, here in Austin, and I do only criminal defense, state and federal, board certified in criminal, and try the most hardcore cases. I'm already 5 or 6 trials in post-pandemic. So far, already got a acquittal on a big sex case under my belt, all since we've been back. So we're putting it hard, and I've already actually had some groups reach out in the state about the Hobbs decision in Roe V Wade and how that's going to have implications to start mobilizing criminal defense attorneys.
Well, I think let's say that, Amber, too, because this is sort of a continuation of the conversation we've had, and I think we're going to be having over the next, I don't even know how long, about the decision recently entered by the Supreme Court, Dobbs, which, just as a refresher, that's the one that overturned the Roe V Wade, where there was a federal prohibition against states enacting certain laws related to abortion. And that lid is now off. And so it's up to the states. And so our hope today is to chat with Amber about questions we have and our friends. And we've been getting comments from different people about, okay, so I guess this is a for real thing. So does that mean I'm going to go to jail or my friends are going to go to jail? So that's our hope. If anybody has comments or questions you want to know from Amber, this is who's going to know, or at least can hypothesize. A lot of it we probably don't know, right?
There's a lot that we don't know because we're in uncharted territory. And some of the questions that we'll get to, there's similarities to some other things going on as far as where there's inconsistency with state and federal. And I think the next question is how that's going to be interpreted. States can generally, be a little more, states are more specific usually on their laws, but again, it's uncharted territory as far as Roe v. Wade goes. We've only gone the other direction so far. So this is brand new. And a lot of the laws that we're now talking about are going to be codified in the Health and Safety Code, which from a criminal defense perspective is we have lots of stuff codified in the Health and Safety Code. For instance, a failure to stop and render aid refers to the things that you're supposed to do in the Health and Safety Code. Now, where that causes a problem is, unlike something that's just set out in the penal code as a crime where you go, okay, these elements are what have been met. It's more interpretive when it's in a different code because all the penal code does is refer you over there. So that leaves it wide open to a lot more interpretation. So just like failure to stop and render aid is interpreted differently in different counties because it's not,
there are elements.
There are elements, but it's more like, for instance, I think the best example is failure to stop and render aid because it refers back to what you're supposed to do when you stop. And there's a whole list of things in the Health and Safety Code, like give them your driver's license, call 911 if there's an injury, blah, 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 blah. But the question is, well, what if you do 2 of those things, but not all of those things?
Right. And does that give you adequate due process notice of what might constitute a crime?
And that's interesting. I actually argued that in an appellate argument on the failure to stop and render aid for that exact reason, because I think it is confusing for a person if they, you're in an accident and you stop, and kind of like in an abortion situation, you're making these decisions based on what you think is the right thing to do. But when it comes to piecing together something between the penal code and Health and Safety Code, it gets a little more complicated and it's not quite.
Amber, real quick. So, cause some of the people who watch our show, most of them are law moms, but a lot of them aren't. So just so that I can kind of clarify, if we could slow down for one quick second. So codes are different sorts of laws. So in Texas, we have all kinds of different codes. For instance, as a family lawyer, divorce, custody, stuff like that, the primary code set of laws that I deal with is the Texas Family Code. In criminal, there's the Texas Penal Code, like what is driving under the influence, or what's a DWI, and these are the things that happen. It lays it out. So the Health and Safety Code is not as directly in any camp, right? It's the laws that govern, I guess, what you have to do to be healthy and safe.
Yeah,
I don't even know, really, honestly.
Well, it's going to get interesting because, the House, the Texas legislature did pass, I believe it was House Bill 1280, that was the Human Life Protection Act, and that mirrors other acts in different states. There's also the 1925 abortion law that the Attorney General is now also referring to. So both of these basically ban abortion at almost all stages, except for very narrowly defined areas, which, again, that leads to very interpretive, realm of figuring out what's legal and what's not.
So let me as a point of orientation for everyone. So we did 2 shows ago. We had our guest Amy Lambert on, and this was before we even knew the decision was coming down that day. And we were going to talk about her journey with infertility. And then 2 hours before that show, the decision dropped. And so we shifted topics rather quickly. And when we were doing that show, a lot of questions came up from the audience about, okay, now what happens if I live in Texas and I travel to another state to get an abortion? Or what if, I've been studying a lot because I'm an immigration lawyer about access to abortions in Mexico and how they're legal there now. But there are pills that people can get over the counter. And what if someone from Mexico mails them to Texas? And there's a slew of those questions, which we're going to get into. But that's why we reached out to you today, Amber, was we want to talk through and really dig into all of the criminal questions that are going to arise. And a lot of this is, what do we know today? And what could potentially have coming down the line. And I think what I want to make sure we're really clear about when we talk through this is, what do we know today versus what are we kind of worried about? Because I don't want everyone to start getting panicked about, I can't go to Mexico for an abortion, if actually you can right now. So maybe, Amber, could you start us off with what's happening today in Texas, because that's where we all are, in terms of abortion access?
So it changed as of yesterday. This is a fast, fluid, moving situation. And essentially what happened is there was a Harris County case in which they immediately challenged the Dobbs decision as far as how it applied to Texas law and abortion access. And a judge in Houston issued an injunction saying, whoa, we're not banning anything until we get through this and sort what this looks like, because we're talking about working on laws now from 1925 that haven't been revisited in 50 years. So this is a unheard of situation. And so the judge in Houston said, a state judge said, wow, let's wait, let's dig in. And so then that was appealed to the Texas Supreme Court. And the Texas Supreme Court yesterday said, no, they reversed the injunction.
Ooh.
So the ban is in effect as of today. Again,
what is banned?
Well, that is even more complicated because it hasn't really fully been litigated. So what is the newest bill that mirrors other bills around the country? This Human Life Protection Act essentially says that it involves whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. That's kind of the core question in that. And it talks about viability occurring very early in pregnancy and essentially an extreme ban. Now, there's also the trigger law, which was in the Health and Safety Code, and that is a little bit different as well. And that's the one that was going to go into effect. And that's specifically kind of what we're talking about as far as how you're going to enforce it. Because anything like this that has not been enforced from a criminal perspective, it's hard to say what's going to happen. But what we can look at is this. We can look at the marijuana laws right now as far as the traveling goes. Like, this is a good way to look at it because we're dealing with the exact same thing when it comes to legal cannabis right now in Texas. So similarly, in 2018, the feds passed the, farm bill that legalized cannabis up to 3% and basically gave states kind of the go ahead to do what they needed to do. Then Texas passed our Farm Act in 2019 that said, okay, we're going to legalize up to 3%. Now, the problem is when you are a legal grower in New Mexico and you are taking legal cannabis to, Louisiana, and you have to travel through Texas, right? Because we have a right to interstate travel in the United States. And the same would apply to the abortion pill, I would think. I mean, I think it's directly analogous in which you have a patchwork of states in which something is legal and not legal. And so how do you, when you have the right to travel with legal goods in the United States, how do you enforce that? How does that, I think the next ban would be the interstate commerce provision, quite frankly, when it comes to the pill and other things like that. I think these are unlitigated areas.
Well, that's what I keep coming back to from my common law professor in school was all about the dormant commerce clause.
Yep.
And that is a part read into the Constitution or whatever. I don't remember if it's actually like spelled out or not, but it's this idea that we take it so for granted that you can go from state to state and that Maine can't tell me I can't come there or I can't do whatever there. Think back, everybody, to, before, when there were all these states, the original colonies and all that, and they're on horses and whatnot. And the states thought of themselves as almost like little countries.
Yes.
And so when they joined together and became the United States, they said, no, we're not little countries. We're united. We're indivisible. And key to that is this privileges and immunities, this right to travel. And at the same time, this clause in the Constitution that says you cannot enact laws that restrict the free flow of commerce among the states. Those two go together.
Which, remember how the southern states in the Civil War held on to that with like traveling with slaves and whatnot through free states, and how, they couldn't have their slaves taken. I mean, this has been a battle since the beginning. I mean, we're seeing it now in marijuana, and I think the new battle is the abortion pill.
Okay, but I have a question. First of all, I just love it when Hannah just spouts out like con law, but like in layman's terms, it just makes me so happy.
Professor Aaron's is like, no, nobody said
it. But here's my question. We're not talking about somebody in Texas driving abortion pills from New Mexico to whatever other state is legal. We're talking about.
Well, I think to Amber's point, that's like, think of manufacturing level, right? So they're growing it in New Mexico that, like, for example, the cannabis, you would have more than, I don't even know 3% of what, but anyway, you'd have a bunch of it going through Texas. It's not legal, I think, to have a whole bunch of marijuana.
It is anywhere in the United States. That's the problem. And that's kind of like abortion, in that you could have a truck full of legal marijuana in, Colorado, full truck full of legal marijuana. And, you're driving it to, Louisiana, and it's legal. And the question is, do you have to drive around Texas to get there, or do you get to drive through legally?
But but now we're talking about the manufacturers and the transporters of the product. My question is the woman who needs those pills who is in Texas.
I think the proponents of the bill to ban abortion are going to address this immediately by ordering pills to Texas and saying that they apply under the law. I think that's exactly, it's not stated. It just states any abortion. The law that was reinstated yesterday is broad and sweeping. The 1925, a complete ban.
On all abortions.
Correct. Except for, there's a very tiny, there's a tiny little caveat, and I think that's if there is, I believe, so 6 weeks is the, it's Senate Bill 8, and it's 6 weeks of gestation. There's the trigger ban, and it prohibits all abortions except when the pregnancy puts the mother at risk or severe health complications that won't, and that's what wouldn't take effect until 30 days after the Supreme Court issue. So That's what's in debate right now, is this ban, complete ban. Yeah.
So the injunction that's in place, okay, I'm so turned around.
Okay, so there was an injunction.
Right, but that's not about the trigger law.
It is. Well, it's about it, sort of. So what happened in Harris County is they said the trigger law, but also this 1925 bill that's already on the books.
Okay.
Paxton's interpretation is that now that Roe v. Wade is turned over, that we can go back to 1925, because the only reason that that bill is no longer in force was because of Roe v. Wade. So he's saying, in addition to Senate Bill 8 and the trigger law, we also have this other 1925 law that was already on the books.
And what is the 1925 law? What does that one say?
It's similar, and it's just over this overarching ban.
Okay.
It's an overarching ban on abortion. It obviously didn't contemplate the pill or some of the other means. And so I think that's going to be the battle in this session. I think contraceptives.
What Amber is saying, Kate, just so we're all on the same page, there was an injunction. Okay. An injunction is a court order that says no. Think of it like a big block. Okay. And then it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, nah, you're not going to be able to say undo. And so they're saying that this complete ban either is in effect, or is the 1925 law would be in effect, I guess now, because it was already on the books. And then this trigger law, I think it was still going to take a little time to go into place. Mm-hmm. So I think the status, as I hear it from what you're saying, Amber, now not having done all of this legal research myself, but it sounds like then that, at least ostensibly, arguably, as far as Paxton is concerned, the 1925 ban is in place. So then that's the question. If it's banned, and this is getting at your question, what happens for, I'm thinking medical providers who are still thinking, maybe I still have a few weeks to get this done. I bet the OBGYNs are booked solid, right? If that for the women who need to get this procedure done, need to get access to the pills. I think we have to think about it like there's a ban in effect. So now what?
And it's complicated because Friday's decision, so this came out late last night. This is hot off the presses, the Supreme Court decision. And
we're still cutting edge.
I know.
We're like news reporters.
Right here. You heard it from us first.
Live to you from Austin, Texas.
Well, so the Friday's decision, it doesn't permit prosecutors to necessarily bring criminal cases against abortion providers right off the bat, but it does expose anyone who assists procurement of an abortion to fines and lawsuits. So far, that's where we're at as far as what could happen right now from that perspective as of this morning. We assume that there's going to be more litigation on this, obviously, because this was just dealing with the injunction about the lawsuit about the ban.
Right.
So, well, that's a very Russian doll. So I think here, let's ask it like this. Well, let me say one thing about the pills. The reason why you have to think about the manufacturers is that's how the pills are actually going to get here.
Not necessarily, because people might pick them up in Massachusetts and mail them to their friends. And if we're asking our friends to do that for us, are we putting them at risk?
Yeah. Well, I don't think as we speak now. So stock up on the abortion pill if you think anyone in your life is going to need it, because I don't think that it seems to right now, a lot of it focuses on procurement and assisting. So I think already having hasn't been addressed yet. Now
using it.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. Texas session is about to start up. And, there have been activists that have been preparing for this moment for the last 50 years. They've got people in place. I'm 100% sure from prosecutors that are going to start, testing the limit to, people that are going to help them test it. This has been planned out for a long time. So I have a feeling that we're going to start getting these questions answered because, Ken Paxton has said very straightforwardly that he is going after this. He is going after it. He wants to enforce it. This is on.
I can't think of a worse human than Ken Paxton. I'm just going to say that.
It's so terrible. Well, if they would just, all I know is if I had a client that was able to just kick it under indictment on felony cases for this long,
I know.
to go to trial and just be living free, what a dream. I mean,
just tweet
that's
it,
a
say
great
whatever you want.
white man elected official in Texas under indictment. Rules don't apply to you.
Hang on. Very lawyer us knowing. What are y'all talking about?
So our attorney general is under criminal charges for fraud that he's been under for years. The state of Texas reelected an attorney general with pending felony cases. So he very well could, and maybe, I don't know, I haven't reviewed the case, but, he's facing charges that carry prison, just on a side note. So
Yeah.
no one seems to care. So because they kept on electing him. So here we are.
But I think the thing to think about, at least for Texas, right? We have people who watch the show from other states. So let's say Texas, but let's also say likely 13, 15 other states that have these trigger laws who are like, the thing to keep in mind, ladies, is this is serious. It's not one of those things like on the books and they're not going to do anything about. The people who've been trying to Amber's point, who've been trying to overturn Roe v. Wade all this time are ready and they're coming for it. They don't want it to just be on the books. They want to enforce this. So we have to get educated about what exactly is going to be yes and no. I mean, look, to be honest, if you've got a stack of abortion pills at your house and you use one, how is anybody going to know? Okay. I mean, that's one thing. I think I think what would maybe be helpful is if we go through some questions, and Amber, you tell us whether, as far as you know, right, this like things are happening yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
If right now a woman goes to their OBGYN and gets an abortion, would she face criminal penalties?
Right now, under the law, as I read it, I read the opinion, the latest opinion this morning. It seems to subject people to fines and penalties right now. Now, there's a lot of things on the books that technically could be criminally enforced. And I think that that's where the attorney general, as the top law enforcement prosecutor in the state, I think that's what he's saying, is that he intends, because remember, the attorney general's office has a prosecution division. And so the attorney general can prosecute anybody in the entire state, anywhere in Texas. And so what Ken Paxton is saying is, I believe, maybe, I mean, I clearly don't speak for Ken Paxton, but I mean, I could. I don't think you'd want that. But, I think what he's saying is that he is going to prosecute things criminally and start testing this law. I don't think he's going to wait for local prosecutors, but I expect, having been a fifth generation Texan and seeing how Texas legislative sessions goes, I bet there's going to be a very right-wing prosecutor somewhere in the state of Texas, maybe East Texas, maybe North Texas, that takes it upon themselves to start testing this as well in a friendly environment in which they're going to get traction.
Man, this next session is going to be wild. Okay, let's think about this then. For the women who are lucky and privileged enough to have the ability to travel to Mexico, to some other state where they can get an abortion if they need it, what are they looking at right now if they did it today? And then there's already proposed legislation to criminalize interstate abortion, but can you talk to us about that, leaving the state, leaving the country?
Well, we've always, as Americans, had the right to travel. That's been kind of part of the core of what we can do, is we can go amongst the states freely. That's kind of the core essence of being united, right? So it gets back to the interstate commerce and what we can do and what we can't do. I mean, it comes back to that. And, I think we're seeing that now in such interesting ways with marijuana, with guns, with our own bodies, obviously, on this interaction between, broader federal law and more restrictive state law. And, in this case, obviously it could be the difference between life and death for somebody, but it's nobody knows how this is going to be interpreted yet. I do think we're going to see I would be shocked if we did not see a criminal prosecution sometime in the next couple of years, probably from Ken Paxton and probably to a provider. I mean, I think they've planned this out a long time. And I think that, they have their chosen enemies like Planned Parenthood and people that have been supporting family planning for years. So I think that they're going to start with low hanging fruit. And maybe that's ordering the abortion pill.
Well, I think, Amber, let's think. So if we kind of keep focused for a second on this, let's think about how criminal laws work. So for instance, if I break a law in California, like I run a red light in California, Texas can't come arrest me because they don't have jurisdiction over that behavior that I committed in California, even though I'm a Texas citizen. So wouldn't it apply here that if I go do something in California that's legal in California, Texas doesn't have jurisdiction to bring criminal charges against me for something I did in California, right?
Absolutely. And that's why people have been getting hookers in Vegas forever. Because absolutely, that's the deal. You can get all the hookers you want when you're out in Vegas, right? And nobody's going to stop you at the airport and be like, you got a hooker in Vegas. I mean, you're exactly right. So I think the whole deal of going out of state to get it is, I don't think there's anything that could actually be done unless they amended the Constitution. I think you're right in that. Like getting an abortion out of state is definitely, I don't think they can come after you for that. Again, hookers in Vegas, good analogy on that. But going back to Texas, I think that's going to be the real question as far as how people get access. I think access is going to be the crux of what we're dealing with here, because that's what we're talking about, assisting and procurement. And, I think just like legal cannabis, I've represented cannabis growers in Oregon who were trying to deal with transport in Texas. And, you can't mail it. Like that's illegal. You can't mail because it's not legal in every state. So I assume something similar is going to start happening with the abortion pill, where essentially, just like marijuana, they're not going to, a legal grower in Oregon can't mail me all the pot that I want from Oregon legally, right? Because it's not legal here.
But I will also say people don't feel as strongly about marijuana as they do about abortion. And like I just pulled up, because I saw a tweet about some proposed legislation in Texas about criminalizing leaving the state to access abortion. And there's this article on the Washington Post, anti-abortion lawmakers want to block patients from crossing state lines. So what I hear you saying, Amber, is that's unconstitutional. It's not going to stand up at the end of the day, but that the reality of how something like this plays out is the Texas legislature passes an unconstitutional law. Some conservative prosecutor prosecutes some poor woman. She goes through all of this pain and trial and maybe jail time for it. And then that case gets appealed and ultimately is deemed unconstitutional. But there's a lot of pain and actual implementation of an unconstitutional law on the way there.
And that's exactly goes back to what Hannah was saying, in that that's the whole thing with the injunction. The thing that was going to stop all of this from exactly what you just talked about, Kate, is that the whole process, even just fighting this, is going to take years to get through. And so that's what these folks in Harris County were trying to do. We're trying to say, let's just put this on ice while we figure out what this means logistically, because we are in uncharted territory.
And I think, y'all, you just took something for granted in what you said, because we have a new court.
Yep.
This court, something that you would say was obviously unconstitutional, just became constitutional.
Yep.
So the Privileges and Immunities Clause and this right to travel and the Dormant Commerce Clause and all of that, we as Americans take for, it's like stare decisis, right? I think of the Privileges and Immunities Clause and stare decisis as two of the things that make us feel American.
Yep.
And so we've taken that for granted. Well, stare decisis, one leg of that stool's done. When you think about the right to travel, it is clearly, in all the cases I know about, unconstitutional to restrict your right to travel to other states. And this would clearly do that. But in this court, and now we have the new justice, right? So we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Justice. Should go by Brown Jackson or Jackson? Which one? I don't know.
Brown Jackson? I don't know, but Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson took over for Breyer today. Right?
Yay!
Yep.
All right, yesterday.
Yay!
So, but all that to say, to date, we would have all said, absolutely, they cannot restrict my right to go to California, to go to Colorado, to go to Louisiana and do what I'm go to Vegas and do what I'm going to do. However, that supposes that they're going to apply stare decisis, apply the Privileges and Immunities Clause, apply the Dormant Commerce Clause the way that it's been applied to date. However, the real scary part beyond, yes, abortion, of course, to me, our foundational heuristic understanding thoughts on being Americans is at stake, because I don't know. Your point's well founded that okay, so Texas is going to institute some law that's going to take years and years and years to ever get to this opinion at the Supreme Court. I don't know if it gets to this Supreme Court whether they're going to uphold our right to travel, and that's why state elections.
Yeah. But, I think we need to start thinking more globally at the end of the day. I mean, whenever slavery ended after the Civil War, it required a constitutional amendment, even though you would think it was implied that all men are equal, since it literally says that in, our founding documents. Yet that was not how it was implicated. That wasn't how it was actually done. And so the 13th Amendment, that outlawed that. Maybe it's time for an amendment for women for full equal rights. I mean, didn't think we would need it, but it was legislated, right? All these little things have been legislated along the way, and now they're being chipped at the whole. Maybe it's time to start thinking of a more global solution. I know that, requires 2/3 ratification. By
that's what I'm going to say, Amber, is like, oh, that is so sweet. And yes, we need that. But the pragmatist in me is like, that pig flying is going to be a long way from now. So my call, and I talk to this with my husband Drew all the time about Democrats. Democrats are not as good at local elections, at least in Texas, as the Republicans, because gerrymandering, because they're still in power forever and ever and ever. And a large portion of Texans that you meet do not agree. I even would say probably the majority, but that's my call in all of this to all of us. Is it starts, nobody cares about school board elections, different commissioners, city councils, all of this. It starts grassroots to flow up, because a constitutional amendment, clearly that's the most direct way to do it. But I think that is a ways away. So you got to focus at home.
Great.
These states, y'all, are the ones who are going to make the laws that may send you to jail, literally jail handcuffs situation.
And I think you were right in honing in on the way that we're dealing with this is, yes, it may not with the current Supreme Court. However, the things that we know, like Dormant Commerce Clause and these other things that are still, as we know now, still in effect, may be the right way to start challenging some of these, because, it's the idea that a person can't go to another state and do something legal in another state is, quite frankly, as un-American as it gets. That's kind of the entire purpose of uniting the states, was so you would be able to move amongst them freely. I mean, that's kind of the inherent fabric of what we're doing here. So the idea that you could ban a human being because they had residence in one state of engaging in a legal act in another is, I don't see a world where even in radical crazy land that could pass. But I mean, we've
been
here.
surprised a lot lately. So, Amber, so I'm going to just summarize this and tell me if y'all agree. Where we are in this moment today, given the decision of last night, is that it's pretty risky, even if you can find an abortion provider in Texas, to access abortion services in Texas, given the, to use a Hannah word, the fuckery of what's going on with the laws.
I don't say that word.
this moment, there's no Texas law banning interstate or, leaving the country abortion. So you could go to another state, you could go to another country like Mexico, and that's not criminalized currently in Texas, but it's probably not a good idea for you or your friend to do like, I'll mail you the abortion pills and you take them in Texas.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think that that's just asking for trouble. I mean, again, but how would anyone know? But I could see it being a setup. I could see the people wanting to ban under the Human Life Protection Act, ordering abortion pill from out of state and having a whole test case where that's the deal. So I do think that, and I think because of the way that they've really focused on procurement and like assisting, I think that's specifically to scare away retailers and providers, obviously, because it doesn't specifically, because I think they would have a lot harder time saying we're going to jail doctors for doing medical stuff, because then even crazy start to push back and go, well, I want my doctor to be able to do what they need to do. So they're not going to word it like that. They're going to word it like the assisters, because then that also, by saying procurement and assisting, then they can go after people, theoretically, who are like organizing, rides or whatever. Like I could see them going about it other ways, right? Because if the person isn't getting an abortion here from a provider, technically they're not in violation of that law, but the person helping them could be.
Right. Well, because I had read, I'm going to try to look it up while we're here talking, this article from, I don't know what is that, from the Skim. Do y'all read the Skim, the news article?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Thing that they get in. And it was so interesting because they were talking about things we need to, and I'm not going to be able to find it while I'm doing this, but that women, we need to be vigilant / on the lookout / protect ourselves. And they were talking about, these are scary times, y'all. Being careful what you search on the internet. Before you search something, go into an incognito window to search, how can I get an abortion in Texas? Of your wearable health tracker devices, don't let it log whether you were pregnant at any point in time and then you weren't. Of your, like, their period tracker apps where you put some of your protected health information, don't log things about being pregnant or your period or whatever, because someday the prosecutors can go get all of that information. Like you were pregnant and then you weren't, but you didn't go get treated for a miscarriage. So what happened? Right. So I think thinking that through, like one of the adages for litigators is don't say it if you can, or don't write it if you can say it, and don't say it if you can wink it. Right. So think that through. If you're going to make decisions to get yourself access to this medical procedure, be careful how you do it. Be careful what you search. Don't text your friend that says, I need to get an abortion, but I'm afraid of the laws and I'm going to do it anyway or whatever. And be careful in how you make a track record. And I don't think tell me, Amber, do you think that I'm being Chicken Little about that?
Absolutely not. I think that, I started my career at the AG's office in law enforcement defense, and I do federal criminal defense of cases right now. The capability of the government is so beyond what I think everybody understands it to be. I've had cases where the government had an infrared drone at night listening to somebody's conversation on the porch of a trailer in the middle of the desert.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're at a next level capability. So you are 1,000% right. And we already know that Facebook and Instagram or whatever Snapchat, all the new stuff has all of these capabilities to track stuff. And we also know that the government, and I will tell you, right and left, get subpoenas for our personal information and investigations from, there's a case right now on geofence warrants where, law enforcement are getting these sweeping warrants to scoop up everyone's digital data that was in an area to try to find something. And, the Supreme Court in that case said, oof, that's a bit much. Like that's akin to like a you know, a roadblock traffic stop, which you can't do, which just searches everybody. You know, we got to narrow this down. So I think that where Texas will go wrong, just by hypothesizing from what I know of Texas, is they're going to be too broad, right? They're going to go for the gut. They're going to go too broad. They're going to try, you know, they're going to try to be as extreme as possible. And, you know, I think, like you said, there's going to be tripwires, like the Dormant Commerce Clause and a lot of things that are other well-established rights, you know, in addition to what's there. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think with our Attorney General, Texas will most likely be one of the more active states. I know Alabama and there's a few others, but I mean, our Attorney General has definitely come out swinging the hardest and one of the most extremes as far as what I've seen when researching for this, as far as how he's going to interpret the Dobbs decision as the top law enforcement officer.
Well, and I think another thing I was thinking about, just practical, right, is number one, ladies, you need to consider that if you're accessing abortion one way or the other, especially if you live in Texas or one of these other, you know, trigger law sort of states, probably getting an abortion right now puts you in pretty murky water at best. You do not want to be the test case.
Right.
So to my brain, what I would also do, my advice would be, this is not legal advice. This is just practical advice. Okay, let's just say that for a second. This is not a legal advice show. We are not your lawyers. Okay, we have to say that for a second. We're just hypothesizing practically about the news. But one thing people might consider is, you know, our phones, right? You start talking to your friend about, I need a new whatever. And then you start getting Instagram ads. So personally, for me, if I was going to talk about certain things, I would turn my phone off /airplane mode, and be careful about that.
Oh man.
Right.
So
and I know,
creepy.
look, it is scary and whatever, but y'all, you can just say, oh, it's scary. It can't be that way, right? We're not in Handmaid's Tale. Or you can get real about protecting yourselves. And we can't put our head in the sand. And maybe we don't like this. Okay, so what? Yes, it's going to be the law. This is going to happen. And I think that there are ways that we can challenge it, but you got to protect yourself. This is really serious. And your daughters, your sisters, whoever's, your friends, just all of these people, because
your wives, your girlfriends,
girlfriends, yes, all of it. And
I think it's going to be really, I think there's going to be areas in which you have to be very careful, but you're absolutely right in how nonchalant we've gotten with spreading information. And it is wild. And from my perspective on the criminal side, I mean, I listen to wiretaps and people's conversations. I listen to all of this stuff in discovery on the rag. I mean, that if the law wants you, the law will get you. This is what I know from my job. And they will do what it takes to get you. And I have people, I mean, I get cases in which they've been listening to my person's conversations for a year. I mean, and they will lie and wait until they get what they want. This is the federal government. And so you do have to be aware. You are 1,000% right. Because if you're somebody that's a target, and especially, you know, we have a top law enforcement officer that has declared open season. I mean, Kent Paxton, and this is a person that has access to get wiretaps and, you know, search warrants. And yes, all of these things are absolutely accessible to the top law enforcement officer in the state of Texas. So
be careful. All right. Be careful. Especially if you're noisy about this. And so be careful with remember, why write it if you can say it? Why say it if you can wink it? That's and, right. You know, if your phone's at least off, there's that. And I think on the other side of this, in my own little opinion, the Privileges and Immunities Clause, the Dormant Commerce Clause, I was thinking of some of the constitutionality of the spy stuff. I don't know, as the you know, whatever those, the what is that called? Patriot, something or another. If that's even, I don't know if that's still a thing. But as far as from the admissibility of different evidence, procurement of evidence, we'll see. I think that stuff could come back up in this context because we're used to being able to talk about our medical care very freely with our mamas, our friends, or whoever. And if you're starting to get access to my protected health information via a wiretap, and then there's HIPAA at play, and then
and remember, Texas is a state where you don't have to know that you're being recorded for it to be legal. Only one party needs to know that you're being recorded. So it's real easy to get set up in Texas on any kind of recorded call. It didn't even have to be law enforcement. I mean, if I want to call you and trick you into saying something and record it, that's perfectly legal in Texas.
I mean, I think if anybody's really listening to this and paying attention, they feel nauseous right now. This is terrifying and horrific. And what Hannah said is right. The state and local elections really matter now more than ever. So do the federal ones, of course, because Congress can legislate all of this stuff. But the state and local stuff, and I think the reality, I'm an optimist, I'll just say that, but the reality is that this decision and the ensuing shenanigans in Texas is going to ignite a fury amongst people that is going to, I think, really shock everybody in the next elections. But if you're watching the show right now and you're like, I can't believe it, and you just want to go crawl into the corner and cover yourself up with your covers and do nothing, I totally get that. But in a few hours or tomorrow, you should emerge. I invite you to emerge and take some actions, whatever it is that you do, that your talents, that your passions are. Like Hannah's talked about before, talking to the people who may not agree with you and trying to move the needle a little bit in personal conversations, getting out the vote, donating, volunteering, whatever it is that you do well. I don't know, knit a blanket with some sort of statement on it and sell it on Etsy. Like, just get active, and because we're gonna see all of this change in our elections. That's how this is going to happen.
It is. And, I think we have to think of this in the broader terms too, because we also have seen Paxton jump on Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion, in which he talked about a complete attack on all substantive due process and privacy, right? I mean, he's talking about starting to enforce, sodomy laws, which, I mean, obviously we all enjoy sodomy now in Texas, and we have for years. So how lame could that possibly be to push back? But, I think I don't think they've been open. I mean, they are seeing this as a broad pushback on substantive due process and privacy and everything that means. And so I think that, Kate, what you were saying is 100% right. People need to be, it has to be burned to the ground, and people need to be on fire about this, because this is just the beginning. This is part of a plan that is just the beginning on privacy. And I mean, Ken Paxton released a statement that was very clear about his position. And, the sodomy laws are still on the books in Texas. That is absolutely still on the books. And the thought of going backwards of anyone starting to prosecute that is, I mean, we're on a slippery slope of terror right now, I feel like, with where we're heading. And so I think the pushback has to be the strongest we've ever seen.
Well, and I think that's what I come back around to I can think that in my opinion, reasonable minds can disagree about abortion, when, how, etc. All right. I think that you're not a complete idiot. Yeah. I think there's some room, but even if you think you agree with the implications of this decision, that really restricting abortion rights. So say that is okay with you. Don't be fooled that that's the only thing going on here. The royal they want all of us to focus on this one thing, abortion. All right. We're just talking about this. Nothing over here. Look over here. Look over here. Yep. When over here, they're overturning everything that's happened in the last several decades, or at least putting it into play. Like, yeah, sodomy.
I mean, an attack on substantive due process is outrageous. We've never had an open conversation about pushing back on due process. This is next level stuff that I don't think people comprehended, that anybody would interpret it this widely and this broadly. And I mean, yes, right now it's Clarence Thomas and Ken Paxton, which I think objectively are kind of fringy, but you know, these are people in some huge power positions that are saying some wildly extreme things that have taken, you know, a lifetime to get in effect and to protect people. So we can't waste 1 second. And you're right, Hannah. This is elections. Every single election in Texas matters more than ever right now. Every single one, down to dog catcher. Everything matters. There's nothing that doesn't matter right now because it's all playing together. I mean,
is that a real election for the dog catcher? I don't know.
I don't know, but if there was, it would be.
No, you've got my vote, dude, whoever you are. I think that's right. And I think sometimes there's not really a positive spin.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just suck.
Yeah. And apparently there's a backup on vasectomies right now. A friend of mine tried to call and get one, and they said there was like a month's backup because.
Good.
Yeah. Well, and that made me happy because I was like, oh, I'm glad that dudes are stepping up and, you know, shutting down the factory. But
Appointments.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, so along that same line of like the male role in all of this, have you seen any, because I thought I'd seen some laws, like proposed legislation where from the moment of conception, trying to put men on the hook to be responsible for healthcare and et cetera, and treatment
Child
of this
support,
baby,
yeah.
Everything from, I mean,
yeah.
in those states, our states, with the trigger laws, that's probably not going to work. Have you seen any of that stuff, Amber?
Oh, there's talk about that. I mean, and I think I saw Chelsea Handler do a piece where she was talking about prosecuting, you know, guys for their rags after they ejaculate. And I was like, I can see that. But yeah, I mean, I think contraception is not off the table. I think that is, you know, nobody's talking about it now, but with the pushback on substantive due process and privacy and everything that means, that brings everything onto the table. Because that's what got us here. And so we're talking about a framework of law dealing with our private, you know, person and what we can do that has been on the books for so long that, you know, nobody has comprehended what this looks like it done differently. And so I think we are all going to have to stay on our toes, just like we're doing right now, and strategizing of how we stay ahead of it. And we're going to have to start being proactive on the pushback. And I think just like the other side has strategized for years and years and years of how to overturn Wade and what to put into effect, I think we're going to have to do the opposite and get real organized.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think that the Republicans have just done better at, especially locally. And that's how they're these gerrymandered districts. I think in Texas, and I don't know if this is the same in every other state, but you know, it's ridiculous the way they draw. Because in my mind, I would think, okay, you take the state and you draw a bunch of squares like a grid, maybe per mile or like per number of persons. That's how it seems like it should work. And what I'm talking about is in each state, or at least I know about Texas, you have districts, right? And you have like a congressional district or whatever. And you have your voting unit, where you have a representative, both state and federally, based on this voting unit, this area, like physical area in the state. So you have to go pull up your address to know which of these district things that you're in. Probably most of us would think, who are not familiar with this, it's, you know, a bunch of squares on a grid, like grid paper. That is not how it is. They draw these wonky, wiggly, long tail, skinny pictures on our state to say where you are. So, and it's led by the state level politicians who draw these lines. And they draw the lines in such a way to gather people from like a conservative area, and a liberal area to balance out the vote. And that's why you'll have, like, for instance, Austin, notoriously Democratic, right? And Democrat voters. You'll have, however, a Republican represent an Austin area. And you're like, how is this even possible? Well, it drew all the way out to Kerrville and it came down to one part of San Antonio and then it kind of came back up like this. So that piece right there to me has always been the main problem, but we can't fix that problem until we get different people at the state level elections to redraw those lines.
Well, when the game is rigged, you can never win the game. I mean, that's the end game, right? I mean, we're rigged to fail. And so everyone that's in support of reproductive rights and family planning has been effectively gerrymandered out of the conversation. So I don't know exactly how we do this except for change it at the local level where it isn't gerrymandered, where I think was your point is that like at least state and somebody has to say something at every level.
Yeah. And I think it's just, it's flashy to talk about the presidential election and maybe the senators and all of that. It's flashy and okay. But it's these midterm things. So the midterm are the elections between, I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to say this. How I think of it is between the presidential elections in the middle, there's another set of elections in case some people don't know that. And at that election is where a lot of these local politicians and local, I mean, state level and all of that and can get elected. So those are coming up in this November. Yes. Okay. I think that's right. Coming up in November. So that it's now July and we have to get real serious about those elections as really the key to how the next few years are going to go. Because you know, Amber, you said it's in the next few years, we're going to see prosecute. I'm like in the next couple months, we're going to see prosecutions of the abortion stuff. So I think our takeaways from today are take this seriously.
Stock up on the abortion pill.
And can I just say something about that real quick? Because my understanding about the abortion pill. So there's Plan B. That's like the day after pill. And you can get those on Amazon over the counter. They have restricted them. But I think it's because they're worried about, you know, people stockpiling. And then there are, and this is just based on research. I'm not a doctor. Do your own. But there's a duo of pills. And I don't even know how to say them because I've only read them. Mifepristone and misoprostol, right? And those pills together, according to the internet, if they're taken before 10 weeks of pregnancy, have a 95% effective rate on an abortion. So that's what we're talking about, that duo, when we're saying the abortion pills.
And, you know, we are definitely not doctors and we have no idea what we're talking about in that area. I was going to say, make sure you ask your own doctor. And then I'm thinking to myself, so long as your doctor is even willing or able to talk to you about it.
Telemedicine. You can talk to a doctor in another state.
That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Personally, not as a lawyer, but that's personally what I would do.
Oh, I want to say something about that. This, like, you know, accessing information resources. That just keep in mind, y'all, that there has been an existing established network of advocates who give out information about abortion services, who provide abortion services. And I know there's a lot of us who are like, you know, saying, if you ever have to go camping and you need help going camping in another state and all of that, and all of us want to help, let's just keep in mind, especially for those who are looking, be cautious, not only about what of your personal information you're putting out there online, but that if you're accessing support or information in some other place, that it's not some pop-up that just happened, and that you're really accessing accurate, you know, information from someone who knows what they're talking about. And they're not going to get you at risk because they're brand new and they're just an activist who jumped into this.
Yeah. So be informed, be careful with what you're doing, and be active. I mean, I think that's the thing. Be informed, be careful, and be active.
Well, and if anyone does get criminally prosecuted, I mean, me and my firm are here pro bono to help anybody in the state that ends up getting prosecuted. We anticipate that they will. We've reached out to organizations. My cousin is the board of Planned Parenthood. So we're trying to get all the feelers in place. So, you know, we know this is going to happen. We know they're going to go in this direction, and we want it to be handled in the way that we can lay the groundwork to turn this around.
I want you guys to all hear this, what Amber just said. She is offering her firm support for women who are prosecuted, or maybe even providers who are prosecuted criminally. And she is a badass, y'all. This is a woman that you want to approach if you're in the situation. So please do listen to her. And thank you, Amber.
Absolutely. We're all in the fight together. We are all in this together. You know, we are not alone. I have enough kids for, you know, a lifetime. I'm good. But with my 2 and then my 2 bonus. However, I've been in this world a long time. I'm ready to fight. I can't believe we're here, but we are. So I think we're ready to go. And whether you're a provider, whether you are just wanting to help your friend, you can always reach out to my firm. Our firm is Criminal Law Austin. It's all spelled out, CRIMINALLAWAUSTIN, or 512-220-8507. And we are here to help with anyone, or if a provider or someone has questions and are anticipating, challenging this law, let's talk.
And I think if I was a medical provider, personally, I would be retaining counsel.
Yep.
If abortion or abortion-related or embryos or any of this sort of reproductive health is in your scope of practice, you need to get a lawyer. A good lawyer. You need to call Amber, and there are some local Austin law moms who do medical work. You can reach out to us and we'll connect you with them, because look, your professional license, not only that, but your personal liberty is at stake. So you people really need to get the advice of lawyers who are on top of this, and I'd have them on retainer and checking in all the time. But okay, guys, so thank you, Amber, for having this very important conversation. We like to wrap up each show with giving out some gold stars, because me and Katie, we love gold stars. And I think, Kate, did you want to go first? What was your gold star? Did you have a person one?
I have a person gold star, and that is that I started the 75 Hard program this week, and I've done it every day. It's intense. The hardest part is that you have to do 2 workouts of 45 minutes each, and the second one has to be outside in this Texas heat. But I did sort of cheat yesterday, because I went and got in the pool with my kids, and I was like treading water a lot and counting it as a workout. But I'm doing the program, so there's
way to go, Katie. Okay.
Oh, yay.
Amber, what about you? Do you have a gold star this week?
Let me think. Yes. Let me think about this.
Mom and food.
As a mom. Oh, yes, that's right. I'm going to have to give a gold star to myself, just for the small task of feeding 4 children. I know it sounds like it would be easy, but it's a lot harder to feed 4 boys than you think on a daily level. I've even calculated, like in one trip, we calculated a week ago that I served 72 meals. Just saying. 70. That's with each person, because there was friends there. So there was 8 people times 3 each day.
It's too bad you can't just have like a trough. I'm okay
with that. I just don't want to be judged.
No judgment here. Yeah, no kidding. Thanks, Leslie. My gold star is going to be my lawyer. I'm going to give myself a lawyer gold star. And really kind of a lawyer business owner gold star. I had some stuff with my firm, the back office admin stuff, which is not my favorite things to do, and spreadsheets and numbers and all this. But I got into the office at 7:30 in the morning and dug in and tackled and faced some things that is not the easiest to kind of deal with, and made some plans. And so I put on my both lawyer/lawyerpreneur hat and got down to business and took care of business.
Stars all around.
There we go. Give it out. We have a little chart. We're going to bring out our chart, a star chart. Okay. Well, Amber, thank you very much for joining us, and everybody who is watching and commenting, thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. I think this is not going to be the last of these questions. We probably need to do an update later, once at least Texas session is going down and we're having a better idea of what's coming down the pike. And we can really be breaking news people. We would do it like outside of the Capitol.
Yeah, I was going to say we do it right outside.
I want a mic. Can I have a mic? We'll get like a Walmart.
Yeah. We can get those teeny ones, like that one influencer. What's her name?
Pinky Patel.
She's so funny with her crown.
With her crown. Hello, my friend.
No one will notice us. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Amber. Thanks, everybody. Have a great 4th of July weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.